Live from the Jersey Shore to the world. Get up, get out, do something. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Take the show wherever you go. Download the free Radio Pup app for your smartphone or tablet. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
The Executive Director of the Ocean County Long-Term Recovery Group. Good morning, Sue. How are you?
Good morning. I am doing quite well. I feel like we were very lucky over the weekend, so I'm quite appreciative.
So tell us, Sue, good morning to you. Tell us, how did everything go? I know we're very appreciative, but there was still quite a bit of destruction for some people.
Yeah, I would say so far it seems like the Atlantic County and Cape May took the brunt of the storm. I've seen some postings about the high tide in Cape May actually being higher for this snowstorm than Sandy. For us, I think we were quite worried about our Back Bay areas and the high tides. Every high tide was kind of everybody was on their edge of their seat trying to see what was going to happen. But, I'm sure for some there were some flooding. You can see easily that there was flooding in the streets and up and down. And but I think all in all, we had over 120,000 people without power. I think that was the majority of the problem, and of course, all our roads were impassable.
So really, the power shortage was difficult, but a number of friends were posting on Facebook, ready for this, I have a generator. So it seemed like we learned some lessons from Sandy.
Absolutely. I think, us as personal preparedness, I think we had a little bit more people better prepared for the storm. Obviously, the towns, they learned their lessons from previous incidents, and they were able. I know you commented this morning. I mean, the main roads. I mean, even as of yesterday, they did a great job with that. And I think that how do we take even the lessons that, Chief Mastronardi was talking about, that in a day or two they'll have a debriefing, and I'm sure that they will find that there's something that they learned from this storm. And my big thing, and working with all our community partners, we've kind of made a pledge that we're going to take our lessons that we learned from Sandy and this Sandy recovery, which we are actively still in, and we're going to implement those changes now within the community and try to do a better job at responding to a major event.
So can you tell us some of these things that you're still working on? I know you're in our building and we watch people come and go, and everybody sings your praises. So firstly, thank you for all that you do with recovery, because although Sandy's a good few years ago, there are still people out of their homes. So do you want to talk about what Long-Term Recovery Group does?
Sure, Kel. So I will go back from the beginning of this storm and say that when a major event happens like that, which Sandy was, in Ocean County alone, according to FEMA, we had almost 25,000 homes that had damage. And out of that, we had a population of 12,000 of them were senior citizens. So when you have a major disaster like that, basically what we have learned throughout the history of disasters in this country is that the community is there first in a disaster, and the community is there last in the disaster. And what I mean by that is that immediately following the storm or a disaster event, you rely on your neighbors, on your friends, because what normally happens is that it's a very overwhelming event. So it's not like your first responders can be everywhere. So those early moments in a disaster, you have to rely on your community. And then after that, I like to call it like the business happens. You deal with your insurance companies, you deal with your home repairs, your insurance, and you're trying to get everything underway. But then what happens? Then slowly but surely, FEMA goes away and you're done fighting with your insurance company. You may get a grant from the state. So at some point, you're only going to have a certain amount of resources to recover. And what has been shown over and over again is that many people come up short on their resources for recovering. And that's where the community comes back into the front of the game again, because the community is ultimately the last safety net for people who are still trying to recover. And we're kind of to the part now where we're still a little bit in the business phase, dealing with insurance company and the state grant program. But I will tell you, from this point on, it is going to heavily rely on the community partners who have come together and kind of woven their resources together to kind of create this safety net. And that's where we're kind of getting now. We're a little bit in the business, but I will tell you that it is the community that is going to be needed in the upcoming years to really help any homeowner who's still struggling.
Can you just find what that means, the community helping?
Well, it's interesting. People have talked about Sandy, Mother Nature, and the impact that she had on us during the storm. But the reality of it is that Mother Nature did give us a wallop with Sandy. But I will tell you that, hands down, the homeowners who are still in this trying to recover will tell you the true disaster of Sandy is the bureaucracy that came after, to deal with your insurance company, to deal with FEMA, to deal with your state grant program. Many of them felt that those entities made it very complicated, and there was a lack of clarity of how to navigate those systems.
Do you know what, Sue? Will you hold on?
Left in this quagmire.
Will you hold on for a little while, and we'll come back and you can start talking about that quagmire after this break.
Perfect.
Okay. Please listen in on 1160 and 1310 a.m. Follow us on WOBM AM and give us a call on 732-505-1160.
Everything you need to know about the Jersey Shore. This is Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310.
Good morning. We are back. It is Tara and Kelly taking over the Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin show, and we have Sue Marticek joining us, the Executive Director of the Ocean County Long-Term Recovery Group. All right, Sue, where were we?
Well, I think we were kind of talking about the how the storm has created a bureaucracy of paperwork and different rules. And maybe this is a really simple way to put it, is that let's think of this. Our homeowners and our renters, we all went to bed expecting a bad storm in, October 29th of 2012. And, they woke up and they're in a nightmare. They went back, they saw the damage that was done to their house. So now in their heads, the minute after the storm, they're just trying to figure out what they have to do to get back home. And then in December, the game changes. And the game changes because FEMA releases what we call preliminarily elevation maps. That means people just found out in December after the storm that this is more than just repairing their home. Now they have to do it to these new elevation guidelines and raise their home maybe 6, 8, 10 feet in the air. Well, that's a game changer, okay? Anything that they had thought that they had to do to their home is now in a total different category. And then they deal with their insurance companies, and we all know some of the challenges that we have dealing with insurance companies. Many people felt that they did not get what they should have from their insurance company, so they were short of funds. When they're short for funds, then they had to go for grants, and they went for the State Reconstruction Grant, which is REM. Those grants were great. It's a gift of money to you as a homeowner, but that money comes with, again, new regulations that they have to do their home. They have to deal with HUD, which has environmental factors that they have to take into consideration, like asbestos and lead. So if you took the money, that's great. You can add it to your construction budget, but then you may also have to add in things that, remove the asbestos from your house, remove lead from your house, be Energy Star efficient, which is all great things, but it's all more costly. So now you got some extra money, but it also may raise the cost of your construction projects. And then what we're seeing really come to light right now for these homeowners is the amount of trouble they're having with their contractor, whether it's outright fraud and they just took the money and did nothing, or whether it's contractor disputes, which are a whole range of things. But that's kind of the whole tale of where we are right now in the recovery. For us in the community, we see that there are ways that we could do better to help right from the beginning of a storm, and even go so far as saying before the storm, to do with preparedness, so that maybe we can reduce the impact of the next event on our homeowners, so that when it comes to recovery, that we can make it go faster and be more effective.
And I agree with you, and I think that's where we're at now. After going through this as a community, now every storm that comes up after this, we have that in the back of our mind. And I remember when Sandy hit, we had Irene in the back of our mind, and I think we were all kind of thinking, Irene was hyped up to be this big thing for our area. I know some people got hit really hard with that, but for our area, we didn't see exactly what they were predicting, so that when Sandy came around, I think we thought at that time we might be just as safe, and unfortunately that was not the case. So I think now moving forward, after you have something that big happen and ingrained in your mind, it doesn't matter if they were calling for 2 inches of snow. I think we're all pretty much now prepared for the worst case scenario.
But that brings on an entirely different subject, which is the mental health problems. And I wasn't here for Sandy. I watched the eye of the storm go over our town, and I pretty much had a nervous breakdown myself when I couldn't get in touch with anybody. But after the effects, it just seems that every time there's a storm, literally every time there's a storm, there's this fear that it's going to be another Sandy. Yes. And then the fear of another Sandy is the quagmire you just described, Sue.
Yeah, and, it was interesting. In September, I was taking my niece to soccer practice, and during the soccer practice, a storm rolled in, and the minute there was a first sign of lightning, the coaches called the practice. We get to the car, and we're driving, and now there's some really powerful thunder and lightning out there. And my niece, who is 9, turns to me and basically says, are we going to be okay? Are we going to have to leave our home?
Yeah, and, we're going to be.
Our kids are in a different. They're growing up with some really different things. Whether it's everything in the news and the wars that we're on, or certainly, our local disaster.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely want to hear more about that, Sue. We're going to take a quick break. 732-505-1160. Sue, hang tight, and we'll be back with you in a minute.
The news never stops at WOBMAM.com. Get the latest from WOBM News, the Town Square, New Jersey News Network, and Fox News Radio. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBMAM 1160 at 1310. Live from the Bob Levy Broadcast Center overlooking the Toms River, it's time to get up, get out, do something. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Be a part of the show, 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Good morning. We are back. It is 6:35 a.m. You are listening to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. We will see mostly to partly sunny skies today. The temperatures will be above freezing this afternoon, highs in the mid-30s. And we are joined by Sue Marticek, the Executive Director of the Ocean County Long-Term Recovery Group. And we've been talking about the storm this morning, the snowstorm, Superstorm Sandy, and everything that we've done in preparation. And Sue, as we talked before the break, there are a lot of people who are still affected by Sandy. And even those people who are back in their homes and have everything physically taken care of are still feeling the mental effects. Can you give us any information about where people can go for help if they still feel lost, if they're still having problems with their homes, anything?
Sure. So the Ocean County Long-Term Recovery Group is still actively working in the recovery of this disaster. And the wonderful thing about the Long-Term Recovery Group is that it is a gateway to many of our other community partner resources in the community to do with everything from possible volunteers to help you with construction to mental health agencies. So if anybody is still struggling in their recovery from Sandy, they can give us a call at the Long-Term Recovery Group, and our number is 732-569-3484. And we hope that anyone who, whether that's themselves or they have another family member or a friend or a neighbor, please connect them, because what we're finding is that we still run into people who really are almost at day one in this storm, and that they really do not have a recovery plan in place, and they need some help. And we would love to help anybody that we can in any way, and working with our community partners is the way that we get that done.
So if I don't have a recovery plan and I'm only getting to this right now, so maybe they took off and went to California for a couple of years because they couldn't face it. They're coming home. They have no plan. They come to you. And again, Long-Term Recovery Group's phone number is 732-569-3484. So what would you first tell them to do?
Well, first we need to assess everybody's situation, because everybody's situation is different. You're right. They may have been away. We have some who were in the hospital, or maybe the plan that they thought was going to work has completely fallen apart. And I think the last one that I mentioned is probably where a lot of people are. For instance, if you have a contractor that you gave money to and they did not perform or they did a bad job, you're kind of stalled out in your recovery, because it's really hard to recover when you may be missing, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 from your construction budget. So then we sit around as community partners, and we have nonprofit builders, we have funders who are still giving out funds. I will tell you that, to me, Tara and Kelly, is the scariest part where we're at now, is that we know that there's still such a great need, but unfortunately the money that was first there to help the homeowners get back home is dwindling down. And so we're pretty confident that the money as it stands right now is going to run out before the need. So we're working very hard each and every day to try to get that next person back home. And the only way that this works is if the community partners come and work together, because nobody, not one agency, has the ability to do it all on their own. And that's really what the premise of the long-term recovery group is bringing everybody together and all their resources so that we can kind of weave them together and figure out how to put together a effective and efficient recovery plan for homeowners.
Yeah, we know that you and Pat Donahue from the People's Pantry have worked and done some remarkable things. Do you want to tell us a fun story?
Well, the great part about going through such a traumatic and impactful storm is that you really do develop some great partnerships and friendships. And I would say that Pat and the People's Pantry has been a shining example of, what can kind of be birthed out of tragedy. And I know Pat's on a little bit later, so I don't want to steal a lot of her thunder about how she came to be. But they were not there before the storm. The long-term recovery group was not existent before the storm. But those two organizations have really, and in their community, and that's what's the best part about it. It is the community that has come together and realized that we have to work together. So whether it's a long-term recovery group who has over 80 different nonprofit and faith-based partners working together, or whether you have Pat over there at the People's Pantry that came from first start with the teachers, and now it's just a host of volunteers. That to me is the shining, the silver lining of this storm is that type. And there's many more. You have the Jersey Shore United, who is doing a wonderful job, and I can go on and list basically all our partners. But it's how to figure this out. And when you have really complex problems, which Sandy is causing now, and will for years ahead. So you have complex problems. You really need unique, creative solutions. And I think the pantry is a great example of that. And I think that together, having, we're going to go into a little bit talking about a COAD, which is Community Organizations Active in Disaster. And that's where we're leading to right now. And ironically, Thursday of last week, we had a kickoff meeting about a COAD, and we had over 50 people in a room talking about how do we do this better? How do we learn our lessons? And it is that type of involvement from our community that will make us better prepared before a storm and recovering after a storm. And, I will tell you, everybody was so willing and able to help out and do anything that was needed if this storm Jonas would have caused a tremendous amount of trouble.
Absolutely, and that's all what it's about, the community getting together. And we thank you so much for joining us this morning, Sue. If anybody has any issues still from Sandy or anything that they need to discuss with the long-term recovery group, you can reach them at 732-569-3484. Sue, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. We are going to take
I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Well, you have a great rest of your day. We are going to take a quick break. If you'd like to join in the conversation, 732-505-1160, or you can listen to us at 1160 a.m., 1310, or on your Radio Pup app. We'll be back shortly.